Okay.
And we're gonna do take two, question one. Okay, same exact thing for Jim. Who is Jim Morrison for you?
Jim Morrison is a singer, poet, rebel. I guess you could say almost kind of like a bandit, not the non-established. I think he was somebody that knew he was meant to do something great, but also kind of knew he wasn't going to be around very long. So I think he did a lot of stuff, writing and excess, because he knew he only had a certain amount of time. And I mean, I don't know, probably my opinion, the greatest rock singer of all time. That's who he is to me.
How early did he die anyway?
He was 27.
Wow.
Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Amy Winehouse, Kurt Cobain, they were all 27 when they died. That they called the 27 Club. Brian Jones, who was in the Rolling Stones, also 27. So it's an ironic number. He's artists that were really good, that weren't around very long. They all died at the same age. And Jim, Janis, and Jimmy died within 10 months of each other. So three J's in the name, too. So it's kind of weird, you know?
Yeah, that is. I didn't think of that. 27, that's weird.
27 Club, yep.
Yeah, the 27 Club. That's a
what
cool
they
name
call
they
it.
give for that.
It's kind of morbid, but it is what it is.
No, that is true. That's true. I mean, we can just jump into that then. How would you imagine meeting Jim in person, and what would you like to talk about?
Well, it would be kind of like, wouldn't try to act like a super crazy fan. I'd be kind of like, whoa, cool, and be calm, introduce myself, talk to him about anything really, because the guy was very, very, very intelligent. He had a IQ of like 170 something. He was smart. He wasn't just some, he liked to drink. He did his drugs. He had an excessive life, but he wasn't that. Just wasn't what he was. There was a lot more to him. That's the thing. A lot of people have this misconception about him. So I would just want to talk to him about anything, especially today. If it was today, with how things are going now with politics and the world, he would have a lot to say about it, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is like the misconception people typically have about him?
That
If you can say the misconception. I think
the misconception of Jim is, like I said, there's the stereotypes of how he lived his life. Like I said, people only read stuff about him. The only people that really can actually say who he was are his family members, friends, and I think there's a more serious side to him. He just wasn't some crazy rock and roll guy. I mean, yeah, he could be crazy, but there was much more to him than just the image and he wasn't just the sex, symbol. He didn't like that after a while, because he felt that people weren't taking him seriously. It's like women just want to come here to see me take my shirt off and be all, studly, when I really want them to hear what I have to say. I don't want them to want me. They want my words. That's what he used to say all the time. I want them to hear my words and hear my music, not just for what I look like. Because anybody can get away with that. If you have to actually have talent, you're doing something.
Yeah. Nice. That's true. I just asked. Very cool.
Hey, buddy.
Keep you rolling, and we're on question 3 for this first take.
Get out of the way, Carlo.
Yeah, fine with that, buddy. All right. So I'll start off with it. So what do you know about Jim's interest towards literature and how he started to write?
I know his interest in literature started off when he was probably pretty young. I would say grade school. He was writing poems. I read a couple poems that he did when he was like in 7th and 8th grade that you would have thought a 30-year-old wrote. I mean, he was very intellectual. He read a lot of books, Nietzsche, I'm trying to think of the other name, William Blake, a lot of these famous poets and philosophers from the 17th, 18th, 19th century. He even did a report in school where he actually went to the Library of Congress and used resources for this project that he did, and the teacher was amazed that he was able to get to the Library of Congress and use a source. As far as writing goes, he was doing that from the time he was in junior high, and as he got into high school, he got more into it, and as he got older, it became more. A lot of his literature and poetry revolves around just life, death, lost love, travel, a lot of nature. He talks a lot about nature, the moon, the trees, very visual stuff.
Yeah, it seems that there's a lot of people saying that Jim was obsessed, or maybe some people are obsessed with death. Do you think there's a reason why he was so into those things? And
The death thing with Jim I think he knew he was not going to live long, and there's a lot of poets that have that dark mind where they feel, especially when they're that young and they're that talented. Poets they express that more than most writers or journalists do, because they're speaking from the soul. And I think Jim just knew he was not meant to be here that long, which sounds, like I said, morbid, but he always said he would never live to be 30, and he was right. So. Yeah.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh, whoa.
So it's just, like I said, he knew it. He has a quote about, about life and death, about life. Well, I don't know why people are so afraid of death, because life hurts a lot more when you die. The pain's over, which sounds morbid, but if you look at it from that point of view, there's a lot of people that are living that are in so much pain, and when they finally are gone, they're at peace. The pain's gone, and they're good. So you got to look at it from both sides of view. It sounds dark, it may sound negative, but like I said, if you just look at the one side saying that life is bad and hurts all the time, he's not speaking for everybody. He's just talking about the average person who might have depression, who are in pain internally, no matter how much money you have, what's going on in your life. If you're still not happy and your brain's manufactured that way, death seems to be more of a, I wouldn't say an easy way out, but it releases all that anxiety and pain, and you're just free, and you're at peace.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Pause that one. We're doing the same grid. All right, and we're on to the next question, question 5, and take 1. Okay, so now this one's kind of. All right, we're good.
Camera shook.
Yeah. Okay, this one says, Jim didn't like possessions. He only carried the clothes on him and a few books he loved. How inspiring do you find this to be?
Well, I find inspiring the fact that he wasn't about money, possessions. He just liked doing what he did. He saw himself as a poet, if anything. Yeah, he's not labeled as a rock star, but he is. But I think he was just happy the fact that he had the freedom to do what he wanted, live the life he wanted, be around people he wanted. That to me is cool, because it's like I said, nowadays, even today, people are all about money and possessions, and he had plenty of it, but it wasn't that important to him. He's like, that doesn't always bring you happiness. So to me, I think that's really inspiring, because it goes to show you, no matter how much money you have and possessions, you could be as miserable as somebody who doesn't have anything and is poor. So, and he, I think, to me, that's pretty cool. That's actually a cool attitude to have when you're in the spotlight like that.
Do you think, would you say he's a simple man, you'd think of that?
Jim, a simple man. He was a complex man. I wouldn't say he's a simple man. He was a one of a kind. Like I'm saying, there's a lot of different kinds of artists out there, and Jim's in that category of somebody who, from a very young age, just had this kind of personality that basically stayed with him until when he was an adult. So he was definitely he was simple in the fact that, yeah, he would wear the same clothes sometimes for days on end. Sometimes there were stories about him, being all dirty and raggedy because he just didn't care. He was like, whatever, if I look like crap, I look like crap. I don't care what people think. But simple in that sense, but his personality was definitely not simple. He was definitely complex.
That makes sense. It seems that freedom was the most important thing in Jim's life. I think we're really getting to that. How did Jim change the way you see life personally?
As freedom and how I see life about Jim, I would say a lot of his quotes and stuff that he said in interviews, just about, being yourself, don't let anyone keep you in chains, be free. I think he said the only, there's a couple quotes. He said something about like, freedom is the only happiness that I have, or not the only happiness I have, but it's the only thing that I can really say that is my own, and I'm a free man. So I can say that's my one true happiness, is I'm a free person. And I have the freedom to say and do what I want, and that's it. And I always liked that. He was always about, like I said, people said he was a rebel. Well, he rebelled against, people, like I said, back then, you weren't even allowed to swear on stage if you were an artist or a comedian. It's, he kind of spoke his mind, and it got him in trouble sometimes because of the times, and a lot of people were conservative. A lot of people didn't like people saying stuff that he said. Like I said, he was kind of, that to me is very inspiring, that he, be who you are. If you're old enough and have common sense to understand your consequences of what you do, then fine, but don't change anything because you're afraid you might offend somebody or that you might get in trouble.
Yeah, that makes sense for that, especially that early on. I think that's a good one too.
You tell your dad you did a documentary interview about he'll be cool.
He's gonna be stoked about that. He loves the Doors.
That's cool. And he's got good taste.
Yeah, that's what he said too. All right, let's see. So this is question 7. First take. Clap, clap. All right, we're going right into it. It says, What do you know about the period when Jim lived on a rooftop in Venice?
The only thing I know about the rooftop that he lived on, it was after he graduated college. He graduated from UCLA Film School. He didn't even go to graduation. He had his diploma mailed to him, and at that point, he didn't want to do movies anymore. I think he was interested in it, but at that time when he graduated, he was like, I don't really know what I want to do. What he wanted to do was keep writing poetry, and I think the roof was a friend of his that lived in Venice. And I think they didn't have much room for him, so they just said, just live on the rooftop. You can put your books there. You can, eat. You can come by and stay with us and eat whatever. I don't know. I don't remember how long it was. It was a good few months before he started getting into the music thing. But during that time, he wrote a lot of poetry, a lot of what would become lyrics to songs, and that was when he was dating Pam, his basically his love, and that they were kind of like staying together, both of them on this rooftop, and that's when they first started to get together, and so that started his whole, after college poet. He's got his love of his life, and it's just before he gets to the music.
Do you think Pam affected his work a lot?
Pam definitely affected his work a lot. A lot of his poetry and a lot of their songs were about her. Oh wait, I mean, I can name probably 7 or 8 songs that they've done that he's talking about her. He never says her name, obviously, but he's talking about her, and he always said that. And he's in his one poetry book he put out. I think it was a couple of books that he had. He even wrote for Pam. So yeah, she was his muse. Him being a poet. She was his inspiration. So a lot of his love poems and problems of the relationships he would put down on pen and write it down. So.
Big one right here. Can you tell me about how the Doors were formed? I didn't know.
The Doors were formed. This was when Jim was still living on the rooftop. Ray Manzarek, who was their piano organist, he met him through college because Ray also wanted to be a filmmaker, and he tried doing it after college and didn't have much success, so he was doing music as well. So Jim knew him already, but after they graduated, Jim and him did not see each other for months. And he ran into him, I think he was on the beach one day, Ray was, and Jim ran into him, and they talked to each other to catch up because they haven't seen each other in a while. And Ray asked him what he had been up to, and he said, I've been writing poems and songs. And Ray asked him to sing a song, one of your poems or songs, and he sang Moonlight Drive, which would be, I think, on their second album. And Ray was blown away. He's like, those are the best lyrics I've ever heard in a rock and roll song. You're amazing. You got a good voice. We should put a band together. And basically, they decided right then and there, okay, we got you and me. Now we got to find a guitar player and a drummer. And I think Robbie was in a meditation class with Ray. That's how Ray knew him, who was their eventual guitar player. And John, I think, knew Robbie from school. They knew each other for a while. And eventually they all just came together. And before you know it, they had a band.
Oh, there's a lot for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to hop into the next one, too, because this goes right with it. Have you ever seen the Doors live? And if you have, was Jim like you imagined when you saw him live?
I wish I could have seen them live. Jim was dead 7 years before I was born, but I've seen clips, videos, and I've heard a lot of live stuff that they've done, and he was basically unlike any kind of stage performer. This guy would fall there. He did these weird dances, kind of like shaman, like Native American dances, because he was really into that culture. He was very dramatic. It was almost like not only was it a music, but it was also like drama. It was like, there was a song called "The War's The Unknown Soldier," and there's a scene at the end of that. There's a part of the song where a guy's shot. It's like a soldier being shot by soldiers, and he would actually go on stage and put his hands behind his back, and Robbie would take his guitar like it's a gun and go like this. And then Jim would just fall to the ground like he was dead. I mean, he did that a lot in a lot of their songs. Very from what I've seen. Like I said, I'd love to see them live, but unfortunately, I wasn't around. So
yeah, did you have any? Was there any concert clips you saw in particular that you liked a lot?
I loved Hollywood Bowl. That was their first really big show. It was back in '68, and I think there was about 14,000 people, and it was one of their first really big concerts. They've done shows, but nothing that big, and that he. Now, the rumor was he took a hit of acid before he came on stage because he seems a little, but he put on a hell of a show because he did their big hits at that time because they only had, I think, maybe 3 albums out at that time, and he did a heck of a job. Like, their big, it's definitely my favorite, but I've seen a couple others as well. There's one in, I think it's in Sweden. It's in black and white where they do about 5-6 songs. He was excellent in that one. I just watched that recently. And there's a couple other clips, that random clips they show that are really cool. Like I said, I wish there was more live footage clips of him. There is, but not as much as I'd like to have seen.
Nice. Cool. Stop that one right there. We're gonna record here. We're good. We are on question 11 now. This is that take for it. Clap, clap. And hopping right in. This is probably a good one for you. What Doors song had the biggest impact on you and why?
Biggest song the Doors ever had that had an impact on me? There's so many. If I can name one that's more, it's called Take It As It Comes, and it's kind of like a love song, but it's all about how you interpret songs and lyrics. It's kind of like an inspiration song. It's basically like he says something, don't move too fast. If you want your love to last, you're moving too fast. Basically, take everything as it comes. Don't try to rush everything. Don't question everything. Things happen for a reason. Stuff like that. That kind of a song I like. And there's, like I said, there's so many other songs. It's so hard to really, because each song is so different from the other. And the lyrics, like I said, they range from all kinds of topics. So I could see why there's a lot of people that would have to be like, wow, there's like so many. But that one, Take It As It Comes, definitely one I find inspiring, because just the title that alone kind of stands out.
Yeah, right one. So wait. Just make sure we'll keep that one. There we go. Alright, this is going to go right into it. This is question 12. Next take for that. Clap, clap. Alright, and this one is, what did the Doors bring in the history of music?
I think the Doors brought in the history of music a totally different sound. At that time, there were all kinds of great music, and that's the thing. I love the Beatles. There's a lot of other great bands from that era, but what made the Doors different was, I think, not only just the sound, but their themes. Like I said, there weren't too many singers that were poets that just became singers, because Jim never took any voice lessons. He was just a naturally good singer and a good showman, but that wasn't something he wanted to do. He wanted, if anything, be a poet or make movies or be an actor. It was never be a singer. So as far as music goes, they brought all kinds of elements that a lot of bands weren't. Death, love, good things of life, bad things of life. Like I said, there's a lot of visual imagery in his lyrics when he talks about certain things, like I said, nature. Like I said, he was a wordsmith. He was a poet. So that to me is what made them. That's what they brought to music. They brought something totally different at that time, where maybe some artists would do a couple songs like that, but for the most part were, even keeled, and they were almost like pop rock, where they were like jazz. They called it acid rock, psychedelic type rock, blues, all mixed into one, and they just made it work.
That makes sense. All right, I'm gonna play the. Keep that rolling. So we're gonna go. This is question 14. We're gonna hop into. Take one for that. Clap, clap. And so this one is. How do you think Jim? Jim Morrison inspires. Everyone today, how we view him as a famous figure.
Today, I think Jim inspires a lot of people. Like I said, there's so many people, young people, a lot younger than me, that are really into him. It's like that with any great artist. Anybody who was around a long time ago, and years and years and years after they're gone, they're still inspiring people. There's a quote he said, a true artist never dies, he just stops giving live concerts, which I always liked, because it says as long as the music's there, or the work that they left is there for years and years and years, like I said, it inspires a lot of people, because people are thinking, man, this many years ago, this guy was thinking this way, he was talking about stuff like this, and the way, like I said, the rebel, the freedom, the whole thing about him being free and speaking his mind and being who he was. A lot of young people today, especially young kids today, they feel that they have that anxiety of, everyone's against us type attitude and rebel. I think that to me is probably how he inspires most people today, and people that were around when he was alive. Just because, like I said, he was just around a short period of time, so that always makes him more significant because just in a little amount of time he was able to inspire and leave work that to this day still makes millions and millions and millions of dollars, which is crazy.
Yeah, I didn't even know that Jim wanted to be a filmmaker, and then it goes into the next thing. What kind of filmmaker do you think he would have been then?
Jim would have been. I've seen a couple. He did a film when he was in school for a class, and he got a D on it. And the thing was, it was very random. It was like clips of Hitler, a guy in a chicken suit, just two people making love, and like it was all just weird montages of clips, random clips, and he's reading his poetry over these clips. And I guess his instructor didn't like it. As far as movies go, he was making a movie. It's actually a short film where he's basically like a hitchhiker and he's like a killer basically. And he actually uses his Mustang that he had. It was a Shelby, which is a beautiful car. It's like a 67, 68 Shelby. And there's clips of him where he's walking on the road. He gets picked up by a hitchhiker. Next thing you know, he's in that guy's car and he's driving and he's going crazy. It's like a short film. I think he would have been a really good film director because he, like I said, as being as intelligent as he was, I think his genre would have been more towards like the horror and action and drama. I don't think it would have been any kind of like love stories, but he would have been he also wanted to produce, write, and direct, which I think he could have done easily. He was smart enough to do it. That was always something he wanted to do after music, do poetry, and then eventually get back to making films. Because he loved making films. So did Ray, the other guy in the band. So like I said, I think he would have been good.
Yeah, that sounds like it. That would have been some crazy films. That Hitchhiker one sounds cool.
It is. It's on there's that When You're Strange film. It's a documentary that Johnny Depp narrates, and they show a lot of clips from that movie that he did with his friend. It was like it was probably like a couple $3,000 or something, and they were out some California highway, and there's a lot of shots of him just driving, literally like someone right next to him in the passenger seat while he's driving. It's cool. What I saw of it's cool, but it was never completed or never really a full film, so who knows? I think he would have been really good though.
Oh yeah, that's perfect for that too. Then what's
the balls to do that, because it's like, how many people would really sit and watch a movie of a man sleeping for 6 hours? Even Jim thought that was strange. Jim was never a big fan of Andy Warhol. Andy was obsessed with him, but Jim was just kind of like, yeah, okay, man, you're even a little weird for me,
That's funny.
Yeah.
That'll hop right into how did Jim's art make you a different person? And this is like his art in general.
His art in general making me a different person, as far as listening to lyrics, reading poetry, kind of made me look outside the box and kind of look from his point of view, and a lot of it made sense. Like I said, there's certain people that some people don't understand, no matter how hard they try. I want to believe I kind of understand where he was coming from and his state of mind, because he was just a different kind of person. He wasn't your usual, rock star. He was different, very different, and I think his art inspired a lot of people, because anytime people think about leather pants, the Lizard King, that was his name that people gave him, because he would do a lot of these reptilian, animal like in Native American dance moves, and like I said, he called it a shaman, which is like a medicine man in the Native American tribe, and Ray always called him that. And they said when you go to a door show, you weren't there just to see a concert. It was like an experience. You were just like in their zone, and you were just like blown away by how different and cool it was.
Yeah. Okay. Then that's really weird. The Lizard Man. Cool. That sounds.
The Lizard
cool.
King.
Yeah. Lizard King.
Lizard King. That's one of his. That's what he's known for, really. Either Jimbo, or the Lizard King.
Is there any part of Jim's story or specific parts of Jim's life that had an impact on you? Like you were most wowed by this guy?
Anything about Jim's life that I thought was really cool was how he started from. He came from a naval. His dad was an admiral in the Navy. They were going from state to state to state to state, and the fact that, like I said, he was so well read at such a young age, and the stuff that he wrote when he was so young, and he continued to keep doing it, and it eventually fell into the right hands where it made him one of the most popular figures in music history. I find that inspiring. He was never trying to be a singer. He just wanted to be a poet. He just turned out to end up being a singer, because a lot of his great poems end up becoming songs. So that to me was inspiring.
What do you think, this is an interesting question I'm reading now. It says, a lot of fans claim that Jim's spirit is flying around. What do you make? What's that mean?
Flying around? Well, there's the conspiracy theories that he's still alive, that he faked his own death. I have friends on Facebook that are huge fans. Some of them think that, some don't. I mean, his spirit could be. You never know. I mean, like I said, people, when they're not here physically, in my belief, is spiritually around us. They're watching. They could be around. It could be like that with anybody, really. But I truly believe that he's been dead since 1971. A lot of people thought he faked his own death. I just don't see it happening. To me, it's like I said, a lot of people have a hard time letting go and don't want to accept the fact that the person's been dead a long time. It's like that with a lot of artists. Elvis, a lot of those guys, they think they're still alive, and it's like, no. As far as the spirit, yeah, and I think especially when you see people like cover bands that do Doors songs in events, I almost guarantee he's there, because he's probably thinking, wow, this is a trip. There's people that are still digging my stuff, and I've been gone for, almost 47 years. So I think it's around, especially for people that are fans.
Have you ever had a dream of Jim?
Yeah, it was a cool dream. It was interesting. He was doing a show. It was me and my buddies. We watched. Afterwards, we went backstage. And, there's all these women that were around, and we're just like, well, we'll leave you alone, Jim, because we understand. He's like, no, just sit down and talk with us. And we were just hanging out, drinking some beer, and just talking about everyday life. It was so cool. It was a quick dream, but I remember waking up thinking, that was actually pretty cool. I was like, I wish I had more dreams where, you meet famous people that you never got to meet before that you like. And yeah, it was a cool dream. I've had a lot of people tell me they've had dreams where they've been to his shows, and basically they were the only one that was there, but we weren't. There was a ton of people there, but he was actually like, all right, guys, come backstage. It's us three directly, so I thought that was pretty cool.
It's a good memory to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It would be.
Yeah.
It would be very cool.
Heck yeah. Let's get that one.
I've never even been to California, so like I said, I've never been to any of those places.
I'm wondering why they put him in Paris.
Well, he was living there when he died, and he was a big fan of that cemetery, because I guess that composer Chopin and Oscar Wilde, the writer, like famous people are buried at. It's one of the most famous cemeteries. Poets are buried there. I think he kind of always said if he was to die there, he would like to be in that cemetery, because I guess since he's been buried there, his gravesite's been visited by more than any other famous person that's been buried there. So, and he's American too, which makes it even more ironic. But I've never been there though. Like I said, I've seen a lot of people post videos and clips. It's changed over the years because people have still tried to break into the, dig into the grave and take the bust of his head on there, and just weird stuff. It's camouflage, like a bunch of people spray painting and stuff. And over the years, they've had to spend a lot of money to almost kind of improve his grave, because it was just totally just not destroyed, but so many people were writing on it. And now they have a fence by it. They used to be where you could actually walk right up to the grave, but because so many people vandalizing and all that, they actually put a little decent sized fence where really, I mean, if you climb over it, they're going to have security and cops. You'll get in trouble. So you can only stand at a certain space and take it, where a lot of people would just be literally laying right next to his grave and taking pictures before they put the walls in. So yeah, it looks cool. I would like to see it one of these days. It'd be cool, but and then the other places in California, I know a lot of people who live in California were in Venice, where when they first started out, his apartment. Matter of fact, some people posted this hotel room that he would stay at when he was in California. And then if you go inside his room, it's graffiti with just writing all over the wall. Jim was here, stuff like that. It's almost like I don't even think they even use it as a room, because it's kind of basically historical.
What's that place called?
It's a hotel in California. I don't remember the name. It's one of the
Alta Cienega.
It might be one of those ones. I'm not sure, but it's one of the more famous ones. Like I said, there's a lot of famous sites in California that Door fans go to, because that's where they got their big break, was in California. Because Jim is from Florida. I don't think any other ones are from California. So.
What about the one? You know anything about the last house on Norton Avenue?
That I'm not sure. That might be the house.
Say
the house on.
What's it called?
No.
This is the last house on Norton Avenue.
Norton Avenue. I think the only thing I remember about that house on Norton Avenue is there was a song called "Love Street," and it's about the house that him and Pam lived in. There's people have posted clips where they've actually visited a house, because like I said, it's kind of like a rock and roll historical site, and there was a song called "Love Street," which was actually right on the street where the house that was just mentioned, where him and Pam lived. And that's when I think when they moved from the rooftop where they were staying at, and they went to that house, and that's when they Doors first started getting famous. I don't know much about it. Like the landscapes, I'm not too familiar with. I know there's a lot of other people that know a lot more. They've been there. If I would have been there and visited it, I definitely would have a little more info. But I've heard a lot of these places, like Laurel Canyon in California. That's a very desolated spot where he went there with the band and wrote a lot of songs there. A lot of famous artists were there that wrote songs. I mean, it's like a real beautiful spot. It's just like, big canyon, and just a place where you can walk around and get lost in your own thoughts and things like that.
Why do you think Jim would go to somewhere like a canyon to write songs?
Because Jim would go to places like canyons or anywhere for inspiration to write music. Because, well, another thing, he took a lot of acid. So a lot of times when you take that kind of drug, you got to be in an environment where if you're in a cave, it's not going to be a cave. It's going to be something different. And being a poet, he can get inspiration from a coyote running by, or he had the song People Are Strange. He actually wrote that at Laurel Canyon, and at the time that he wrote that song, he was really depressed. He was down and out. He was doubting the whole music thing. Even though they were pretty famous at that point, he just wasn't sure if he wanted to do it anymore. And Robbie would be like, was kind of nervous, thinking he was going to do something to harm himself. He's like, I just need some time alone. He walked off into the canyon, and about 3 hours later, he came back and he had a piece of paper and he wrote all the lyrics down to People Are Strange. He felt a lot better. He was like in a much better mood. He felt like uplifted. So I don't know. I think it was just, when you're a poet, you find any place for inspiration to write, whether it be in a cave, a canyon, or on a top of a house, or an airplane, or whatever.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Canyon.
It's pretty. I'd love to see it. Because like I said, a lot of famous artists have been there. Jim, they're just one of the many, and a lot of people would hang out there. And like I said, it was a place to just relax, collect your thoughts. It was quiet. It was peaceful. It was pretty.
Yeah.
So it's good
crazy.
inspiration.
I'm thinking of a can.
Yeah, I know.
That's one place to go for something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, this gets down to the last question. What do you think is so? I guess it says, what do you think is so special about Jim's energy? Since there's so many people around the world who still love him. So I guess to make that more general. He's been dead. It's been a long time since he's been alive. Why do you think Jim is so still like a legend today?
I think Jim's still a legend today, even though he's been dead many years, is because when you're in the arts, like I said, and you're in music in particular, and you're only around a short amount of time, and you make timeless music and timeless art, like I said, it inspires people from that time period and way after. Like I said, there are kids, 9, 10 years old, that like their music. Like I said, that shows you the true genius of an artist. Like people like Mozart, 200 some years after his death, he still has music that comes out. They still outsell everybody else. There's something about somebody who is a genius at their craft that they always will inspire. There'll be people that don't like them, but there's always going to be people years and years and years later that still listen to the music, and that's what keeps the spirit in the music alive, is their art. Even after they're gone, people still look up to them and still see them as an inspiration, because this person did what they want to do. They did some great work in a short amount of time, and now they're immortal as far as they're going to be legends. They're always going to be young. They're always going to have that success. Nothing can take that away from them. And like I said, unfortunately, dying so young, it's part of it's on him. He didn't take care of himself. But like I said, I don't think he was meant to live. There's some people that just know. Like I said, he's not the only artist and the first one to ever say I wasn't going to live that long, and we're right. There's plenty of artists that always called it. They just, something in their brain. Like I said, it's that genius in them that knows that something isn't going to last for that long, and they're going to do as much as they can while they can. Did he know he was going to die right then? No, but he didn't. I don't think he knew he wasn't going to be around more than a couple more years at the most. So I think that's what inspires people today, is that his charisma, him standing up for what he believed in, being yourself, not bowing down and taking anybody's crap. It was basically be yourself, live the life you want, be happy with who you are. The ones who show you respect, you show them respect. Treat everybody the way you want to be treated, and that's it.
Yeah, that makes sense. There is one more little one that I think you wanted to touch base on too, which just says, it's phrased, that Jim dedicated his books to Pam. Do you think it was because she believed in him as a poet, or it was a pure act of love? Which I guess it's...
Well, the dedications to Pam, I think it's a little bit of both. Because I think he felt that she inspired him as a poet. But when you're in love with somebody, like I said, and you're a poet, they kind of go together. That person's an inspiration. Now, was there ever times where she probably thought some of his stuff wasn't that good? Probably. I'm not saying she probably loved all his stuff, but I'm sure she loved the fact that he dedicated, most of his poems and a lot of his songs to her, because it made, she always claimed herself to be his wife, even though they technically were never married. She always called herself Pamela Morrison, which wasn't her last name. It's ironic because when he died in his will, he left everything to her, and she only died, I think, a few years after he did, and her parents ended up getting a large portion of the money because they were the next of kin, and her parents couldn't stand Jim, despised him, yet they got super rich off of him and then it turned into a big lawsuit because the surviving member of the Doors were like, well, you know what, we're on this music. Robbie wrote, their guitar player wrote Light My Fire and a lot of their other songs too. I mean, Jim wrote probably about 88%, 90% of their songs, but Robbie wrote like 2 of their biggest hits. So when that time came around, they were outraged because they never really cared much for Pam. They put up with her because it was Jim's woman, and he was their brother. Will put up with her, but they didn't like her parents because her parents were very judgmental. They didn't like them. They couldn't stand them, and they didn't care what the next of kin was. These people should not even getting rich off of a person that they couldn't stand and wouldn't have nothing to do with, even though their daughter was dating them. So eventually, it got to a settlement where they divided it up, and the survivor members were able to get money, but it took years and years and years. And I'm sure they're probably, I don't even know if they're still alive, her parents. If they are, they got to be in their 90s because she's been dead a long time. So, yeah, I think Pam was such a huge part of his life, so you can't really talk about him without talking about her, because not that she wasn't the only one. Obviously, he was a rock star. Women loved him. He had his plenty share of extramarital, affairs on the side, but he always came back to her. No matter how many fights they got into, how many people she was seeing, they always came back together, and basically that he was with her when she died.
Wow, yeah.
For the most part, anyway.
Yeah. I didn't know that her parents were. I didn't know that his buddies didn't like her.
No, not too much. They dealt with her, but they weren't big fans because she always felt that, you don't need them. You can make money doing poetry and being on your own. It was kind of like the Yoko Ono and John Lennon thing with the Beatles. A lot of people, Beatles in particular, didn't like Yoko Ono, and the fans hated her because they thought she broke up the Beatles. A lot of people could probably say that about Pam, about the reason why he was kind of drawing himself away and the reason why he drank the way he did and stuff. A lot of it had to do with the fact that those two were always like at each other's necks, and it stressed him out.
Was Jim like a hard drinker?
Yeah, he was an alcoholic. It wasn't just alcohol. It was obviously a lot of LSD, cocaine. I mean, he did pretty much everything. There's a rumor though. They always said that the original story that everyone talks about is that when he died, he was in Pam's apartment. He was in the bathtub because he wasn't feeling well. They'd been drinking and snorting heroin, which, according to people that knew him, he didn't touch that stuff. He hated the fact that she was a junkie, but apparently he started using it when he got to Paris, and he'd stopped drinking for a while, but his health was in... Anyway, he died in the bathtub, supposedly. That was the rumor. No one ever saw the body but Pam and the doctor. There was a closed casket. The bandmates didn't even get to see his body, so that's always been that mystery. It probably wasn't him. It was somebody else. There's no proof. But there was a story that's been going around for years that he didn't die at the apartment, that it was almost kind of like set up to be that way. There was a place called Rock and Roll Circus in Paris. It was a very famous bar where artists, drug dealers, pimps, all kinds of people would be there. A lot of people got drugs. Apparently, the story is from a guy who worked at that bar that knew Jim well, said that Jim took some of this heroin, went into the bathroom, and snorted it. And I guess people were complaining because there was in a bathroom stall and he wasn't coming out. They busted the door open, and the story was he was laid there on the toilet and he was dead. And they're thinking, okay, we're going to freak out. Jim's dead in our bathroom. We can't let this find out. So what they did is they waited till the bar closed. They took his body and went out the back door. It might have been still open, but I know they had to go out the back door so no one would see him. They took his body to Pam's house. They took his clothes off, put him in the tub, and basically just told Pam, this is what happened. He's been here all night, this is what happened, just tell him this. And she got rid of all the drugs and stuff that was there when the cops got there. Because they said when they found his body, he was warm. Well, it's because he was in bath water. Once they took him out, he was cold. He'd probably been dead for hours. That's the story that I believe happened. I don't think he died in a bathtub the way Pam said he did. I think it was probably, he probably did overdose on heroin, but his health was so bad from alcohol and everything else, it was just a matter of time before something was going to take him out. So
yeah, isn't that a weird thing too with like artists and that I guess that those extremes between like drugs and being a star? Yeah.
No matter what, like I said, well, he always, I'm Irish. Yeah, okay, that's a stereotype, but alcoholic or not, that's not an excuse. He was an alcoholic, and it did ruin. It got him in a lot of trouble. It ruined his health, and eventually, I don't know if that. Like I said, they said the cause of death was a heart attack or natural causes, which is kind of anybody could die of natural causes or heart attack, but with him, maybe his heart was bad because he didn't take care of himself, but it wasn't natural causes. He did something that night, which I believe was probably heroin, and it killed him. And his years of excess, the food he ate, because like I say, he put a lot of weight on over the years. There was times where he was actually kind of bloated because all he would do was just drink and eat whatever he wanted. He didn't want to be the sex symbol anymore. So, like I said, I think he basically, that's what I believe happened. And if it wasn't going to be heroin, eventually he wasn't going to stop drinking. It was going to kill him. They didn't have AA back then. They didn't have these places now where people with addictions could go to. A lot of his friends believe if he had been around today, he'd probably still he would have lived a lot longer because he probably would have tried to get his help, because he tried to stop, but when you're an addict, it's easier said than done.
Do you think he wanted to die at some point? Or?
Do I think he wanted to die? I don't think he wanted to live a long life. So I guess you could say, yeah, maybe not at that moment. But I don't think, like I said, he said that he would never live to be 30. He probably figured, I would like to get like 27, 28, maybe 29 years in, try to get as much more stuff done as I can, and then eventually just, that'll be it, and that'll be good enough for me. Like I said, he always knew he wasn't going to live long. I mean, he was talking about that when he was in his early 20s, so it was always something in the back of his mind. He knew that he probably isn't going to live a long, full life. So I think that's probably like he lived the way he did and did the things he did because he knew he only had so much time to make up for. So
live fast, die young. Right?
Yeah, live fast, die young, and leave a good-looking corpse. It's unfortunate, but it happens. So like I said, he's forever young. So there's people who were born in the 90s that are like, oh my God, he's so cool. And I've never seen somebody with women in particular, oh my God, they're like young girls are like in love. I'm like, man, the guy's old enough to be your grandfather. Like, of course, obviously he's young, but it's just crazy. Like I said, his image and everything else, and all the younger guys are just like, man, this guy's so cool, because it's like there weren't a lot of artists that were doing stuff like that. I wouldn't say people were square back then, but people were more following the rules of, okay, we can't be too provocative, we can't talk about this, we can't act this certain way. He didn't care. He was just like, whatever, He put on good shows. He put on bad shows. There were some shows where he had a little too much to drink and he was all over the place, and people would get pissed off and be, almost riots would start, and sometimes he'd provoke audience members and almost cause a riot. I mean, like I said, he lived on the edge, so, that was him.
Yeah, perfect.